Today on Dusty Ridge, I'm going to explain to you why my pastured pigs had one bad, stressful day in their lifetime and how I'm going to be able to improve that the next time I raise pastured pigs. But before we get to that, I want to explain to you what we do here on my farm. On my farm here in Southeast Ohio, I rotationally graze sheep and cattle. What that means is I give them a small area, usually up to from 3 or 4 days up to a week area that they can eat on. And then I move them off of that, put them on some fresh ground, let that area recover. And that way, next time they come through, it'll have thicker, stronger grass and the ground can recover. So that way we don't have issues with parasites, the grass grows stronger and the animals are happier and healthier. I also pasture raise pork. What that means is, like an area behind me here, this was all brush before. I put the pigs onto that, let them root that up, till it up as much as they can. As you can see, it's turned into a lot of dirt behind me. And then we let them off of that. I usually keep them in an area anywhere from 2 weeks to a month, depending on how big it is and how much brush is in there for them to clean up. Once they're done with that, I plant that area with some cover crops, let it recover. That way we've got something in the soil to stop erosion. And then I put them on a fresh area to let them till that up. Core values of our farm is to have happy, healthy animals with a low stress life as much as possible. When you're farming, sometimes you do have to put stress on the animals for their own safety reasons, as far as moving them somewhere or medical reasons if they need attention, something like that. But as much as possible, we try to reduce that. I do that through the rotational grazing, like I said earlier. That provides them with high quality feed. It also keeps them in a nice clean area that reduces parasite loads, and they're not in their own manure and urine, things like that, just to keep them a little bit happier and healthier and cleaner. But unfortunately, the other day when I went to load my pastured pigs, I put them in a high stress situation that I want to try to avoid the next time. So I'm going to explain that to you, what I did and how I believe I can improve it for the next time. But before we get to that, I want to show you exactly what our pastured pigs were able to do for us as we had them in this brush for about 6 months, the impact that they had on us. This area here in front of me was the last area that we had our pastured pigs on. There is still some brush in the area, but for the most part, they cleared out quite a bit of it. I mean, this here is pretty well cleared up and ready to be planted with some sort of cover crop. We have started to get a little bit of rain. It rained 3 times last week and it rained last night, so that's why we do have a little bit of moisture showing up on the ground there finally. So hopefully it's supposed to rain again this Tuesday and Wednesday, I believe, so in a couple days. So if we get that rain, we should start to see a lot of things start growing again. So maybe I'll be able to, if we get enough moisture, be able to plant something back in here. The pigs have been gone for 5-6 days now, and it's been so dry that I thought there was no use in planting any cover crop yet. So now that we're starting to get some moisture, I may start to do that. Here's the previous area that they were in. Again, this here on the bottom is cover crop. This is mostly annual ryegrass and forage oats. I did also throw some sorghum sudan in there and some sunflowers, but I believe they need to be direct seeded and not just broadcast seeded like I did. It didn't seem to work very well for them. But this is kind of what we wanted to see, the progress this year from up there on the other side of the fence. I'll take you up there in a minute and show you just how thick the brush is and what was growing in there versus the pigs helped us eliminate all of that and till up the soil. And especially when it was wet, it was very, it looked just like a garden, like you'd taken a tiller through there. But unfortunately, it got so dry that this hardened up a bunch, and we're going to need quite a bit of rain to soften it back up so I can plant it. But this area here was tilled up very nicely, so I just broadcast seeded this, and we had those forage oats and the annual ryegrass take over, and they've done pretty well. This has actually been grazed once. My calves got in here because I forgot they can get under the fence line, so they saw this fresh green grass and they were all about it. But even with that, I think it's starting to come back pretty decent, because that was about a week ago and we've gotten that moisture coming through, so it's helped this regrow. I did have a couple bare spots where the ground just got so hard that it would not take off. You can see the fertilizer the cows left behind, so I'm excited about that. So this line right here that's in front of me, that is the line where I had them divided before. So this was planted about 2 weeks before this on my right side versus this on the left. It's pretty much caught up and almost the same now. You can tell though that we did have some taller forage in here when the cows came through and they were able to graze it down. It is definitely recovering quite nicely. I mean, all the way down and through there is where the pigs were. So they were able to till that up, and we got that seeded with some high quality forage that if this takes good hold, if we keep getting this rain and the roots grow down deep, should be able to graze the cattle in there from now on and have them some high quality forage. It goes clear down even, let's see, way down into there and back around. So they were able to clear quite a bit. All these tree stumps that are in here, if you haven't seen, I went through this spring, like this one here too, and I cut down the smaller trees to allow some more light to get to the ground. I need to thin out a little bit more. It's hard to do in February, March when we don't have the leaves on the trees, so I couldn't tell exactly how much light I was letting in. I wanted to ensure we had some shade still, but especially the spot up here, I really opened that up, and the cover crop is taken over pretty well. We still do have some of that multiple rows, but now it's so thin and they've cleared so much brush, I can come in here with some hand tools and clear that out relatively easily with a machete and some snips and stuff and just get rid of that. Compared to where it was before, it was so tangled up that I could barely walk through here. So I definitely appreciate what those pigs were able to do for us. So this is a shelter that we built for our pigs. This is the only building that our hogs were ever raised in. If you've ever seen how the pork you get in the grocery store is raised, it's raised in confinement barns. And what I mean by that is these animals are put into barns where it's shut up, they can't even see daylight. So essentially just put a board across that and stick some hogs in there, give them feed, and put in a light bulb for them, and then they clear their manure and urine off the floor. It's got slats in the floor, so it just runs off, and then they put it in a big pond down below their facility, and that's how those hogs are raised. They never see grass, they never see sunlight, any of those things. So if you're not sold on pasture pork or you don't understand it, just do a quick Google search on how commercial hogs are raised. It is unfortunately not a very pretty business. It's nothing near like even how feedlots work. Feedlots are so much nicer in comparison to how hogs are raised. It's my belief though that we need to start caring about where our food comes from. It doesn't have to be all natural and organic all the time, but we need to at least care about the welfare of the animals, how they're being raised. Because you can't tell me that a hog that's raised in a barn that never sees anything like this is going to have the same health benefits as an animal that is raised out here and is able to live in its natural habitat. This animal is going to be much more healthier, and then eventually that's what you're putting into your body. So in my opinion, there's no real comparison. And unfortunately, a lot of people that farm like to raise their hogs. Essentially, they'd give them a shelter like this and then just rope off like this top area, put them in, you know, a 10 by 20 area and just let them root that up, which is really not much different than what they do in a factory farm, except for they can get outside and see sunlight, but they're still going to be in mud, in their own urine, in their own feces, just because the lack of space. So again, always keeping animals moving is a big idea on our farm. That's what we want. It's one of the core values that we have. Keep animals moving, keep them happy and healthy. In that process, this is why I put these animals over here first and started moving them down the hill during the summertime. So I knew we needed more shade for them and get a lot hotter, because west is where the opening faces west on that building. So they would have been out here in a lot of sunlight all day long. So we wanted to make sure that we did that early in the spring when they needed the sun, and then versus the summertime where they would want the shade, we put them down further over the hill so they wouldn't have that blazing sun on them all afternoon. So this division here in front of me is another divide between paddocks. So here was where we just were, and then this was their first area that they were in. You honestly, besides the brush clearing that they did back in here, you can't really tell by the forage growth that they were even in here, because that's the regular cow field, and then this is where the pigs were. There is a spot up here where we had straw spread out for them that hasn't quite recovered as much yet, but I mean, look at the forage that's back in here. So it did not really make too much of a difference. A ton of clover coming back, and the orchard grasses recovered really well. I believe the cows already got to the turnips. They ate the tops off of those. So we've grown quite a bit of forage in here for them. That's a pile of brush that I scooted out of the way so we could set that fence up. My first videos on the channel, that's where the pigs were. That's the trees where I had their water set up and those sort of things. So they've definitely did a good job helping us clear that out versus the comparison. They were not able to get back into that. I took them down over the hill instead of through the woods. So that way they could get a little bit more grass to root up, because there wasn't a ton of forage and stuff back through there when I first took them in. Again, it was March when I was moving them through there, so I wanted to make sure that they had something good to eat. This just shows you the benefit of rotational grazing. This here in front of me is orchard grass, the thick bladed long grass that we have growing in here. And then you can see the clovers coming up, back up through here. This orchard grass did not get replanted. This was just tilled up, and then I moved the hogs off of it, and just through the rest and recovery, it grew back. And this has actually been grazed already. The cows came through here. There's some of their fertilizer, and they've grazed it, they fertilized it. The pigs fertilized it, tilled up, aerated the soil. So this has definitely improved so much. The other areas would look just as good, except for this area had so much more rain in the first few weeks of its recovery. It rained, you know, 3, 4, 5 inches, something like that in the first 2 or 3 weeks that it was recovering. Those last areas have had maybe 2 inches the entire time they've tried to recover. So it's just put them so far behind and stunted their forage growth. But once we get that rain, those areas will take back off just the same. So it has really been amazing to see the progress these areas have made as far as turning this into silvopasture, because eventually what I want to be able to do is to walk back into here and look down over the hill, you know, clear out a lot of this brush. I still got all these logs I need to cut up for firewood this winter. And then I just want to see that orchard grass clover forage mixture just running down over the hill, and then I can just put my cows and my sheep down into here and give them a nice area to cool off during the summertime when it's just so hot. Like this summer, the last few weeks, it's been pretty much 90 every day. I think we had one day where it wasn't 90 in the last 2 weeks. So it's just been so hot this year compared to average. Our average right now is supposed to be 83 to 85. So, you know, 5-10 degrees above average every day for weeks on end, and little rain. So I'd like to have some more forage available to them and give them a nice area to cool off. And my canopy thinning has worked pretty well for the most part. I still got a little bit here and there to do, but I think it's working out pretty good to get some light to the ground. It doesn't need to be the most in the world, because again, the shade's more important to me than what having the most maximized forage growth that we can. See, even down in here though, the lights just didn't get enough in here to grow quite as much as I wanted, but it's starting to recover versus up on top of the hill. So, and that's the area where the pigs just left. You can see the big scar that it had, but it will heal, especially once we start to get some rain in here. Here we are in the old pig area. You can clearly tell by the fence line and the dirt there where they were able to get to. So this is what it looks like after they're finished with an area, and here's pretty much what it looked like when they went in to this area. I actually had to stop. I had to go around this because this just got so thick I couldn't even fit that fence through there. But just all of the briars and the brush and the brambles and just anything imaginable that you didn't want to have to try to cut down yourself is in here. I mean, it's one thing to go through and cut down those trees like that. It's another thing to be trying to clear all of that brush and stuff out. So having the pigs, when they're able to just set up a fence and let them knock all of that down. The autumn olive, I believe this is autumn olive or big thorn. It's got like 4 or 5 different names, at least from what I think it is. And then the multiflora rose growing here. There's just so much brush taking over this area, so it's why I needed to get something in here to help me clear it out. And they don't kill all of it. I mean, that there, you know, obviously it doesn't look like they did much at all to it. But if I took on the other side over there where I was feeding quite a bit, if I took the feed and threw it in there, they would eventually get the roots up on those. See that one down there? They did quite a number on it. Tore it up some compared to what they did to this one. So they do eventually kill those things out. Also their water tanks, I did the same thing. You can see there's some down there that they wore out pretty good. So that's the idea with the pigs, was to help us clear out these areas. And then, like I said, once the ground gets softer and we start getting some more moisture, I'll come through and I'll seed this, and then we'll have quite a big area already cleared out and starting to turn into good silvopasture. We have so much more back in there that we can eventually turn into it. I mean, all of this down and through here, that's my whole idea. I want this whole area to eventually just be some nice trees that can provide some shade, and then have some nice grass growing underneath. So, but now we're going to head up close to the house. I'm going to show you the corral, and I'm going to go over the mistake that I made on the last day of raising these pigs. So I'm about halfway back to the house, and over there is where I just was, and you can just see a visual difference from the sunlight being out right now, how much more sunlight gets to the ground over there. A lot of these type of trees. There's Camden. Hi, Camden. That's my nephew. He's visiting us today. So what we need to do is come through, and like those trees where he's walking through, the really small ones, I need to take a lot of those out to let some more light get to the ground. I did let the cows come in here to get shade, and they did eat some of the forage that was growing. I don't know, it's some sort of weed or grass, but they eat it, so I don't mind. But that's pretty much that only thing that grows back in through here. So I'd like to get some more light coming through the ground. I have to be careful. See, one thing I want to think about, like that is an oak tree, so I want to cut around that tree and not take that one out. I want to give it actually more sunlight, so eventually it'll be able to produce some more fruit for us in the form of acorns, something that I can't eat, but deer, squirrels, and if I have hogs here, they'll eat them. We also have behind me on the edge here, we have this, and I believe this one here, a couple of walnut trees that we've got growing. So we're trying to strategically keep those and then remove, like this is just a maple. This here, which it's going to be so massive, I don't think I can remove it, but that's a poplar. So they're good for firewood, but they don't provide anything else. Again, maple. So there's so much maple in here, it needs thinned out. We're supposed to have this as a hickory and oak forest is what the majority dominant species are supposed to be, and this is a lot of poplars and maple because they grow so fast that they've taken over since this has not been properly managed. So we just need to take those things out, and if we find any oak trees or hickory trees, just let them grow up. Right, buddy? So again, I've mentioned this a few times. If you're going to farm, make sure you have solid plans. Think this through, either write it down or just think it through in your head well before you go ahead and do this. Because again, this is an oak tree and it's surrounded by a massive poplar tree on this side. And I'm not quite sure exactly what type of tree that is, but I know it doesn't produce any sort of fruit. So you have acorns that you could have here. But if you're just looking at size, you'd cut that one down because of how small it is. We want to preserve that one so that way we'll have a giant oak one day that'll be producing acorns. And we've also got a nice walnut tree behind it, and we've got a couple poplars here that could come out, and then again you've got another nice walnut. So you want to try to think of those things as you're thinning out your trees. Think far into the future. If it doesn't seem like something that's going to produce much fruit and you need to thin for shade reasons, pick those trees first and then leave, even if they're smaller right now, because they can still get under that tree and get some shade. And eventually it'll be a huge tree that'll provide some fruit, and it'll have a ton of shade for these animals. To begin the video, I mentioned that one of the core values of our farm is raising happy, healthy animals and reducing stress on them as much as we possibly can. And I made a mistake when I was loading my hogs. We gave them a good life. I enjoyed raising my hogs. They were a pretty pleasant animal to have. Really, as long as you fed them, they would follow me pretty much anywhere. I could scratch them on the head. They were very tame animals. But I learned the hard way, and hopefully I can educate some people out there if they're first time and they've never done this before, or if they're struggling with it, that loading hogs can be very stressful, and honestly it was pretty dangerous the way that we were doing it. I would not recommend it, and hopefully in the future, I've already gotten some tips from some other farmers out there that have given me some ideas on how to reduce the stress load on myself and my animals, so the next time it can be much safer and much quicker. It took us about 3.5 hours, and it was extremely hot that day. We actually had a heat advisory, and by the time we were done, I was about to pass out. I've never been so dehydrated I passed out before, but that was about as close as I got. I had to take the water hose and just have my wife hose me down because I just felt like I was going to pass out on the side of the hill when we were done here. So what we did is, I have a corral area behind me that extends about 20 feet the other way, and what we did is we brought the pigs in here and then we slowly funneled them into this area. And I thought, we had the trailer backed up where you are and we had the gate swung open, and I thought with that and these plywood pieces to border the sides of it and to push from behind, I thought that would be plenty to get those hogs into the trailer. And unfortunately, that was the last thing on their mind. I mean, they were in this area so long. If you can see on this side, we've got plenty of grass growing, and behind me we've got plenty of grass growing. They were in here for so long that they just started rooting up, and I had thrown feed onto the trailer for them, and they simply refused to go after that feed. That day, there was so much pressure, and I know that they say pigs are very intelligent animals, and it seemed like it. They knew that something was wrong, and they did not want to be a part of this loading process at all. So we actually had to call in backup. We had to call some family to come over and help us. We had 5 or 6 people here, all of us holding gates and pushing them with boards, and it was just a super stressful time. And by the time we were done, we were honestly concerned that some of the hogs, it was so hot that they might be overheating and about to have a heart attack. So we had to take a water hose and hose them down as quickly as we possibly could. And it was just a stressful situation all the way around, and it's not something I would recommend. Honestly, if I had to load hogs like that every time, I would not have them. My wife and I talked about that. We said the number one thing is next time we have to figure out a better solution, because we can't go through that again. It was just one, extremely embarrassing that I had to call family over here after telling them and showing them what I thought was me doing a good job of raising animals for 6+ months, and then now I can't get them on a trailer without a fight. So it was extremely embarrassing, and two, the stress that it put on the animals was just almost too much. I felt like a terrible farmer. You know, it's the last day of their life. You know, we're taking them, we're loading them up, they're going into a butcher to be processed and turned into meat. So we know that they're going to meet that their end, but we also want to provide them with a slow transition. We don't want them to be stressed out the whole time, because I feel like as a farmer, that's my job, is to provide and protect for these animals, give them what they need to survive, and then, you know, keep them safe and secure. Don't make them stress out. And unfortunately, I just didn't have my planning correctly for that. So I guess in the future, what I've been told is that if you have the ability to set a trailer up and feed them in there for a few days, 2 or 3, 4 days, then they'll get used to walking in and out of that trailer, and it's not nearly as big of a deal. So that's what I'm going to try in the future. Unfortunately, in this situation, I don't have a livestock trailer. So what I was doing, I actually just paid one of the local neighbors here to come over, and he was going to load them up and take them there for me. So not only was I embarrassed that I had to have my family here, and they were trying, and you know, maybe somebody was going to get hurt, also trying to move these pigs in there. Then I had my neighbor that I told, yeah, I've got everything planned out for, and then you get your hogs here to 3 feet in front of me. I couldn't get them to step that far. So it's a lot of stress on yourself and all of the people that you put in that scenario, and your animals. So that would be my number one thing. I really enjoyed having the pigs. We're about to have a lot of high quality meat from them, so I believe everything else worked well. It was just the loading process. And I also believe that if I had some sort of way to get them into the trailer a little bit better, I did have some plywood ramps that we had built, but it just seemed like they were a little bit leery of it, and it was taking them too high up. They didn't want to be climbing that far. So I've loaded cows and sheep and all sorts of other animals, goats before, and I've never had nearly the problem I had with the pigs. So just because if you've raised cattle or sheep and you think, oh, I can just load the hogs up the same way, they're not the same deal. I'm here to tell you, I learned the hard way. So please learn from my mistakes. That's kind of why I made this channel. I don't know everything, and a lot of what I have learned, I've learned the hard way. So I don't want people to think that I try to be an expert and tell you I do everything perfect all the time. Honestly, I would have made a video, but there was so much chaos going on during this that there was no way I could have recorded. And I didn't really have, everybody's hands were tied up trying to get the pigs in here, even with having 7 or 8 people here. So there was no way I could hand a camera to somebody and say, hey, make sure you record this. But that's the problem I had. That's the mistake I made. Eventually, after 3 hours, we did get the hogs onto the trailer, and it only took about 15 minutes for them to get hauled to the butcher. They got unloaded there, and they had a peaceful end to their life there. They just relaxed for the next day until the butcher come in and ended their life. So now we're waiting to get them back and get them processed. The people at the butcher were very understanding, you know, as far as what time we were going to be there and all of that. And then they were able to hose down the animals again once we got there, because we told them the situation, how much they were fighting us. So they made sure that those animals did not suffer. That was my biggest thing, is the reason we're doing this is because we believe in good animal welfare. So unfortunately, I did make a mistake there, but I believe that I turned it around at the end, and at least they weren't stressed the entire end of their life. Camden was here for it, weren't you, buddy? Give me a high five. He said those pigs made a lot of crazy noises when you were trying to load them. I said, yeah, buddy, they weren't very happy about it, but eventually we got the job done. And also, that's another thing about farming, is a lot of people see the positive side on YouTube, but they don't. Again, like I said, I just didn't have the ability to record that. That was you know, three and a half hours of just sweating. It was 85, 90 degrees already because it was early in the morning. Just sweating as hard as you could, and you're just trying to get these animals onto the trailer, and they're fighting you as hard as they possibly can. It's one of the most stressful things you can do. So if you don't have a good why behind why you're raising your food and why you want to have animals on your farm, you're going to quickly give up. So that's again why we talked about before in some of my previous videos, finding your grounding, knowing why you want to have the animals. It can definitely be a bear sometimes farming. It's not always easy. So just always like to recommend that to people. Think about those things, because a lot of times you see the social media, you see the pretty side, you don't see all the ugly. Again, here's the rest of the corral area. I'm standing right here where the funnel was that we had for them. So it wasn't like we gave them a massive area. We just took them down, pushed them this direction, and then once they started walking up a little bit, we put a gate and pushed behind them. And even in that little area there, they would not just walk onto that trailer. It was one of the most frustrating experiences I've ever had farming. Again, I don't tell you this to scare you away from farming. I encourage everybody to go out there. If you have any interest, make a plan, start with a few animals and see what you're able to do. Some people love it, some people will never want to do it again. But I also don't try to sugarcoat it for you. There are some really tough days out here on the farm. But fortunately, we're able to get the hogs there. They've been taken care of. Hopefully, we're going to pick up that meat from the processor soon. And then we'll have a lot of high quality protein that I'm able to feed my friends, my families, and my neighbors. So as always, I appreciate everybody taking time to watch this video. It means a lot to me. Please subscribe and comment if you haven't already, and have a great day.